Good evening, everyone. I'm going to bring this Board of Finance meeting for April 23rd, 2025 to order. I am Mike Anderson, the chair, with Dan Smith, the vice chair, Carl Johnston, Gary Anino, Amy Friend is the secretary and an alternate, Lou Gingerella, Winona Burdine is an alternate, but she's going to be seated for Sarah Nelson tonight. And we have Suzanne Thoreau, who's our finance administrator. Captain, but I cannot for the life of me remember your title every time we. BBOT? OE. Anyway, Suzanne Thoreau is here to help us with tech, and she runs the finance department for the town. Second item is public comments to start. Yes, sir. Brian Rathman from Grindstone Hill Road.
Is it on? Yeah, sounds like it's on. Okay, Brian Rathbun, 263 Grindstone Hill Road. I just want to finish up what I didn't finish up the other night.
Okay.
I might review a little bit of it. I'm not going to take a lot of your time because I know you got a lot to do. When I do my budget, it's usually, and I'm sure you guys do too, but I'm just going to tell you personally how I do mine. I look at it, I got a certain amount of money coming in, you know that. The town only has a certain amount of money coming in. I look at my wants and my needs. And I know one thing everybody knows, I always want a new truck. But do I really need one? No, that gets cut every year. It's still running. I'm keeping it going. It's 20 years old, but I still am fine with it. So that's my example of wants and needs. And I think in the budgets, that's what I see too. A lot of times in the Board of Selectmen's and the Board of Education's budgets. I gave you my information on the Board of Selectmen. I like to see 2,000 for each for the second and third selectmen. I think they deserve it. They deserve more, but being cheap like I am, that's the way I feel I could do. I know there was a very emotional thing the other night with the giving closet. And I didn't speak on it because I know the emotions were high. One of the things I do in my budget, which is very difficult, and I know it is for the town too, you can't look at a budget when the emotions are high. I can't. I have to look at my budget as black and white. This is what I got coming in. This is what I can put out. It's not that it's bad. It's not a bad organization. The town does supply the spot for them to be in, which has a cost right there. I don't know if it falls under the educational part, which I've heard. I think that's kind of stretching it. I understand the buildings are supposed to be for secondary education. I don't consider that secondary education myself. The school, I understand, had some kind of involvement in it with providing money. No, wait a minute, how'd that happen? You know, I don't understand all that. So I'm saying it's starting to become a business. So if it becomes a business, it's not using the proper way to use that room that we have supplied. And I'm going to leave that at that because I don't want to get in a big conversation. The Board of Education, I think every year I come up here and I have a tough time. I'm sorry. I really do. And that's why I told you, don't take it personal. I don't try to take and put blame anywhere, but I see it all the time. They inflate. We need this. And every year I say the same thing. It's a matter of want and needs. I want to see the Board of Education look at, okay, this is what we need or want. But look at the definitions of want and needs. There's certain things you're gonna need, certain things you're gonna want. If you want, like, technology from 5th to 12th grade, that's what you want. But maybe you have to go back and say, okay, we don't need from 5th to 12th. Maybe we can only do 9 to 12. Let the younger grades use, like I said before, use this computer right up here. It's the best one that's in the world. And I'll tell you, it is. It's the only one I got. Well, it's not the only one I got. I got a laptop too. The sports are good. I feel that our town should be concentrating on the kids that live in this town, and that's where our tax dollars should be going. Out of town, that's fine. But that shouldn't be on the town. Because I look at it this way. You put it out of town and then they're gonna come back here. Is it just to get more kids in our school? It shouldn't be. We are responsible for the kids that live in this town. And I feel this way, whether they're in public school, private school, or homeschool. Those are the kids that live in this town and we're responsible for. Recreation department gives a lot of recreation in our town to our kids. And so does the school. Is that all we're gonna do? When I went to school, we only had 3 or 4 sports, which was fine. We were fine with it because we could concentrate on our studies. The kids that were in the sports, oh my God, they just, during class, oh, we got a game tonight. Oh, we got to rest. We got to do this. I want to see our kids excel in using their brain. I think the staff and administration and the Board of Education should be looked at again. I think there's some staff and administration, maybe. We don't really need. We were forced to have some back in COVID. COVID's over. And I really believe that we don't need to keep going down that avenue. And the other thing we got to do is how successful are all these programs that we have? And I don't want to keep beating on the school sports, but I know I look back there, we might have 1 or 2 kids using it out of town sports. Well, we got to look at that. How much is that really costing the town? People say it isn't much money, but this taxpayer, you all know, my nickel and dimes, I don't like anybody reaching in my wallet. If somebody wants to play sports outside our town that we don't supply, which I don't think we should, we have sports here and they will play other schools. So anyways, I would suggest that I saw the Board of Selectmen go down to 3.77. I would like to see the Board of Education re-examine their proposal, because I think there's other cuts that they could make and it wouldn't hurt them a bit. So thank you for listening. I'll let you do your job. And by the way, I'm very proud of you all.
Thank you, Brian. Always good to end up with something positive. Any other public comment online or otherwise? Okay. On to agenda item number 3, our budget discussion for fiscal year 25-26. Anyone raring to start? What's that?
What is on the table? What do we? Just
On the table is what you heard from.
General ideas.
Yeah, well, we have 3.77 from general government. We have 4% from Board of Education. We have what we heard from the presentations from both boards. We have obviously the giving closet and was the main point of contention. We have, a discussion of whether or not the Board of Education budget, to Brian's point, needs to be looked at and cut, or is there something that you feel should be put back?
From my perspective, I think what was presented is supportable. And I don't see any changes that I would recommend. I think what was presented was well thought out, a lot of hard work, and they did what we asked them to do. So I would support as presented with no changes.
I agree. To address the emotional part of the previous meeting with the giving closet, I think the Board of Selectmen provided a way for the giving closet to get funded in a reasonable approach. And
Bring your mic a little bit closer to you, Gary, please.
I think the Board of Selectmen gave the giving closet a way to be funded with a reasonable approach. And I think that if they follow that approach, it makes sense. Absent of that, I think that we, by funding it as a line item in the budget, are creating an exposure for the debt.
Well, it's a line item, right? It's a line item right now.
No, it's not. No, it's not funded. No, it's not funded.
Okay, let's go, right, okay, so there's not even a dollar in it.
I'm with them both so far. Leave it the way they are. They all got back the way we asked for. Everybody worked hard at it. I think we're put them two budgets forward, and then we'll figure out the balance after.
There was about 62 people in the room that I counted the other night, and I only heard 3 comments that really was about the budget outside of the giving closet. The giving closet, as it stands today, I believe the structure would be supported under the Board of Ed. And I do not see a line item in the Board of Ed to support the giving closet, and I personally would not be supportive of putting a line item in the Board of Ed budget for the giving closet. I think the structure that was laid out is what makes sense. The budget that we have at 24.2, I think is supportable. I think it makes sense. I think that both teams worked really hard to get here, and I think we moved this forward.
I just have a question on, and I know Bob's not here right now, but Suzanne's is here. On the 6th draft, and this came up kind of after the meeting. John Olson brought it to my attention, and I was trying to figure out on our spreadsheet for what the delta was at the present mill rate. What is that number exactly? Because according to the last page of the budget, it looks like we would need 128,679 to, but it was a different number in that presentation the other night, and I didn't have time to go and fill in my numbers myself. So if we could just confirm with that, with our little, yeah.
Yes, you're correct. The formula was incorrect on the spreadsheet.
Okay,
So Bob and I looked at it. We confirmed the mill rate the
Just bring
net-
that mic
the net
closer to you,
grand list.
Suzanne, please.
We confirmed the net grand list. So what's up on the screen here, and I can share it.
Okay.
This is what the net grand list is. And this is a deficit here, the 128. And that's the number we were looking for the other night.
Okay, okay. That's much more palatable than what we had the other night.
Yes.
And Mike, where is this in?
You don't.
The last page, if you look at the total revenue summary, the first block, and you see the first thing, and I mean, I'm colorblind as hell, so it's
Got it.
orangey,
Yeah,
yellow.
yeah, I see it.
128, 679 is the delta.
So maybe this gets in the weeds a little bit, but Suzanne, where are the leases? So technically, that would be debt.
Yeah.
Outside, and redemption of debt, from what I understand, looking at this sheet is just the school and the emergency services and the big long-term mortgages.
Right, those leases are in capital, they're not in,
Yeah, I know, but where I'm going at with this is somewhat, in my mind, a little deceiving, because there's debt that's not included in that redemption of debt line.
It is in part because we don't own the equipment. It's owned by the company that we're leasing the equipment from.
It's how it's struck, yes.
Right, so that's why it doesn't it doesn't show like, it's a capital obligation. But it's not debt.
Right.
Well, it's a little technicality. I mean, it's that debt service all over it, but that's why maybe it doesn't show that.
The reason I'm going is I'm thinking about the undesignated fund policy and what's considered debt and what isn't considered debt. So I personally, I don't think it makes any sense to pay down the debt on the school emergency services because the rates are so great. The leases, I am more comfortable with, even though we've already paid off our interest on those. It takes a debt burden off the taxpayers' back, which we would start next year and every year after better. But that's kind of where I was going with this conversation. But I want to see where Lou goes because he's already winding up. Turn your mic on.
Before you start though, can I mention one thing? We talked about looking at the cost of living and everything going up. Should we first look at changing our percentage rates in our designated fund before we decide to take anything out of there? As far as should we move it up 1%, 2% to accommodate for our cost of living so that we have a balance to cover?
I think the optics on that is bad. We're over our policy right now. I think we follow the policy that's at hand. We balance the budget based on the policy, and then we readjust the policy limits if we feel it's appropriate. But that's just my opinion. Others?
when you say balance the budget, Gary, you mean
Eat
you take the
into-
128,
eat-
680,
Eat into the gap.
eat
Yes.
into the gap.
But
Which means that we would
but
pay-
in a manner that actually benefits the town as far as paying down debt. Not balancing the budget for 1 year and moving on. Let's take a long-term burden off the taxpayer's shoulders.
Not creating a revenue shortfall. You're
Exactly.
Going in there and paying off something that is on here that equals out to 128.
Yep.
680.
Yep.
And that's what I would agree with as well. Like, we have to look at, the Board of Selectmen has to look at a capital item and say, we're gonna, if we're out of money at the end of the year.
I'm not in disagreement. I just wanted to bring that point forward before we decide what we're doing. But Gary's right. We should get done what we're doing this year and then go look at our policies and see if we need to change them.
So in essence, right now, just so we're, it's semantics, but I think it's important because we did this last year. You know, we had more planned in the undesignated fund. And we had a $96,000, we're in the red last year. And we were able to absorb that. And, in fact, I don't think we even ever had to use it. And that's why we didn't have to, we got money back. The government gave money back at the end of the year, which, you know, it still kind of blows my mind a little bit, like, you know, how the hell did we, because we actually lowered the mill rate and covered the debt and never had to take anything as an appropriation out of the extra appropriation out of the undesignated fund. And I think it's a testament to how well the town is running and the school's running despite, you know, the issues it had last year bookkeeping wise. And I have no problem, you know, using the undesignated fund in the overage that we have over our policy to cover that shortfall to keep the mill rate at 28.88. So, because I think that's within the policy of saying it's for mill rate adjustment. And this is actually keeping the mill rate from going up according to, when I believe it was 29.09 that would be required to cover that 128,680 gap. I think I speak for all of us on the board that we would rather see that covered by the overage and the undesignated fund than see the mill rate go up.
Except I'd like it framed so that we reduce the town debt, and as a byproduct of that, the mill rate stayed stable. I don't like the optics of capturing this as we stabilize the mill rate, but paid down debt. We paid down debt because it was the right thing to do for the tax.
But
And then a byproduct of that is the mill rate falling.
then I think you have to go about it a different way then, Gary. If we're saying, all right, we're gonna take a capital item and pay it with the undesignated fund overage and take it off the budget, you know, to the tune of 128,680. That's one way of saying I'm reducing the debt,
Yes, absolutely.
right?
Yep.
Okay, but we haven't necessarily done that on paper.
Right.
But I can, you know, I'm with you.
Yep.
That if the Board of Selectmen is going to need to use 128,680 at some point, it's going to a one-time capital item, not a recurring charge. We're all on board with that.
So be careful, not a one-time capital item. We're not buying anything.
I'm
new.
saying one for this year.
An existing asset.
Existing
that we're paying off over time.
Correct.
These are important.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Paying on an asset that's not a forever recurring budget item. Right?
Well, let me just,
Go, Lou, go.
maybe I'm reading this incorrectly, which probably am. The 128 that we're short right now. That's after paying, after we've approved the budgets as presented, including the capital budget, which has the normal debt service requirements. If we cover this 128,000 shortfall, by taking it out of the undesignated fund, there's no additional debt repayment with that. We're just meeting the obligations as presented in the budget.
That's correct.
So where are we getting this paying down debt? We're doing that as a normal course of business.
Not paying down debt. It was applying the
Shortfall.
shortfall to a capital item.
But it doesn't matter. You could say then it's covering any item.
Indeed.
There's- So why do we need to couch it in a way that we're paying, that we're doing it to cover an obligation that we obligated to make? It's a loan payment we have to make. Just like we have to pay the light bill. We're using the undesignated fund to cover operating costs.
Don't get wound around the axle of the words. All
not
I
getting
want,
wound around anything.
I want to feel,
I don't want,
personally, I want to feel good about the fact that we're not
Gary wants
using
to
it
own
to,
the- He wants to own the truck.
no, yeah.
but you're not doing that. There's no additional debt payment being made here, not one penny,
But we have outstanding payments to be made.
in the normal operating budget.
So that would be a yes.
No. Yeah, this is word salad. That's all that is.
Your ball, Lou. What do you want to do?
I get, what I'm suggesting is that the $128,000 represents such a small percentage of the overall budget. It is noise. It is money that we've got a fund to help cover a very small shortfall like this without changing the mill rate. And if you want to feel better and say we did it to pay down some debt, which we're obligated to do anyway, good. But that's all we're doing, is we're just making the. we're
Which is
just-
what we did last year.
Right.
I'm
but
hearing
it's-
a word salad of yes.
No, I'm just saying we're just doing it as a good practice in business to not raise the mill rate. We will dip into this, our reserve fund, which is over. If the mill,
Right, how much is it over?
if the fund was at 8.5%, I don't think anybody here would be saying, let's take the money out. Let's
Correct.
make the mill. rate.
Correct,
We are over our own policy.
correct.
You could almost make the argument, bring it down to 17% and cut the mill rate.
Which is what we did last year.
Carl just asked a good question. How much is the undesignated fund dollars over the 17?
Well, we got an email today that might be changing that whole thing too.
Okay, so let's just
Give me a
go with
ballpark.
what we know.
Suzanne has that number.
Yeah. It's what, it's like 344, but. I don't know if that's-
344 roughly.
344
So just,
minus the 128.
Yeah, but you gotta take what we approved for the ambulance in there, which is not in that list.
You had it on the back of a piece of paper.
the 423 is not the correct number?
Yes,
Is that
you
what we're
I
saying?
have a lot of pieces of paper.
Dan did all the math the other night when he was supposed to be listening to the audience.
We can buy one
Oh,
truck.
Okay,
pay
so.
off the 128.
4,300,000.
So rough numbers right now.
555,310.
344. I'm
And
thinking,
then we approved the appropriation for $76,000 for the ambulance. 76,000, which brings it up to
347.
All right, so if you take
Yeah, but
and
you
put the
don't-
128 to get the budget up square
Yeah, but
Okay.
you
and
don't-
buy one truck to take it off, we free up a payment for the next
hold on,
3 or
but
4
you-
years.
But you don't have in that number. you do
That puts
not
us
have
back
what-
at 17%.
Wait.
This is the conversation I wanted to have a long
you
time
don't
ago.
have-
Wait,
Yeah, well,
Dan is still speaking.
Gary
You
wouldn't
don't
let
have
me.
the $76,000 in there that we approved. So it's not, it's not. to
There was
date.
no way I was having this discussion
Wait,
with
what
the
what
Board
are
of
we missing,
Education
Dan?
at 6.5%.
$76,000
Wasn't
that we-
happening.
$76,000 that we approved for the ambulance through an appropriation.
She subtracted that
Where
out.
is it?
It's in the 347. She did the math.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Well, I
so,
was looking for it. I'm like, I
okay,
don't
so
see it up there.
347 and change is roughly what we're over, the 17%. So,
Take the 128, 680 out of it,
so minus 128.
pick one of these trucks with the payoff number that we have.
So that's
You're gonna make me
119,000.
mad.
So we balance,
Huh?
You're gonna make me mad.
so we balance with the 119. Lou, pay attention. So we, Lou, 128 is to get us even, and then
Yep.
we have 119 to.
219.
219.
219 to work with,
change
to work with, to work with.
by the ambulance.
Make sure it's off.
But if you, what'd you say, you bought the ambulance, you basically bought the ambulance and you're not paying that, you're not paying that over the next 4 or 5 years.
So on the leases,
Yes,
this is on, these are on the leases.
because we don't really have that much. Outside the buildings and certain projects, we don't
This
have
was
a lot of debt.
meeting.
So
And I haven't even spoke my opinion about last one.
Me neither. We should probably do that before we get into this conversation.
Yeah, we're close.
Yeah, but what if I want to add to the budget?
well,
This is a part of the budget discussion.
I'm not even that persuasive. Ugh.
It's like- I was gonna say, I hope it's not fun.
$219,000.
And we've already paid off the shortfall, right?
Our shortfall for this year. Which is making the payments, like you, Lou said, it's making the normal payments on the debt for this year. Which if we pay something else off, actually, whatever,
So we're proposing then that we're going to lower, we're going to bring fund to the 17%.
we're bringing
No.
taxes down.
No. No, are we, wait a minute.
This is the budget discussion.
We would be bringing the taxes down if you
Public discussions later on.
would be lowering the taxes if you lower the mill rate. But we're not doing that. We're going to pay off debt.
This is absolutely a budget discussion because we're deciding what we're sending to the town. I was just saying what we're sending, because we could tell you, take out $219,000 out of your budget.
Or fund the giving closet to the Board of Ed. So which way do we want to go with this?
Yeah, don't tell us. Stick to your own board. So the question. What are you guys looking at? Oh, you're talking about the debt sheet?
So if we're going to do this, then the capital budget changes. And as a result of the capital budget change, well, they're in
They have to be
the
somewhere.
operating budget.
They're in the capital budget.
So that could, I'm sorry.
So my thinking, which I'm the guy in the backwoods.
No.
Is if you take and pay one of the trucks off.
Yeah.
Instead of 219, you're gonna have that payment added to that pile this year. Because that payment, you're gonna pay it off. So 219 plus the payment is what you actually have.
That's where I was going with that.
Right.
Yes. It's kind of a circular reference on the spreadsheet.
You lost me right there. I don't know what you're talking about.
So, but, right? Yeah.
So if you go
Um,
back up here with a payment that allowed for each year, payment amount, whichever one you're gonna pick, you're gonna knock off that payment for the next how many years we had to pay.
Correct.
So 80, if we pick one that says 83,000, that 83,000 that we're gonna pay off this year is actually added to the 219 again. to run the money.
You're paying down the debt over the next couple of years.
Right.
Instead of just making the debt service payment like we was talking about just this year.
It frees up the last 2 or 3 payments of that amount for next year.
No,
Have we got it right?
no, Carl,
Lou's still struggling.
no, I'm But just a point of reference that you and I took a look at a payment schedule, Suzanne, that you had provided to us. And now on this big document that we have here, we're being shown savings if we're paying these things off early. That's what. So there's a remaining balance on this sheet. Looking at the Volvo, nice, the last one. The remaining principal balance, says remaining balance of 180. If we pay it off today, it's 170, so we save the $9,000. That's what we're talking about. And that's, then, and we have confirmed that that's, when it says remaining balance, that remaining balance is the principal amount that we owe, not the remaining money we owe to the lease company.
So
There's a difference.
they just bought or going to buy a mini excavator.
Mhm.
Correct? How much was that? 150, 120, 120? And you guys bought it or leased it?
Nothing yet. We're waiting to sell the brush truck. They sold it 4 times.
But at that rate, you might as well just go buy it outright. It's gonna be in the budget anyways. So it's not in this budget.
And when would you expect to have that? Right after the budget. And how much was that? So,
Our lease payments, I mean, our rental payments on the work that we're supposed to do, probably start in June.
Mhm.
They're on basically every vendor has them available, so
It's new off the shelf.
Yeah.
Good.
Nobody's touched it, so.
now it's got all the work done. We didn't wanna,
Where's the Volvo
Then-
one? It's
then don't-
on our
Any
regular budget.
income from the sales,
yeah,
right, but it's not on this budget. So that'll offset that a little bit.
this is the Volvo loader lease that from the
No.
dump?
No,
It's a different one.
C19?
Okay.
Yeah.
C1.
Just wanted to make sure. Okay. So again, I just asked the question, if the remaining balance, if that is principal or if that is principal and fees, that's all I'd be interested in. Because usually on a lease, you don't save anything by paying it off early. Or if you do, it's not a full dollar for dollar.
So there's no early payoff on the, there's
No.
no early payoff penalty on these,
Oh,
correct?
thank you. Yeah,
Yes,
that's it.
there's no fees except for the first one, the tank, the pumper, there's fees for the
Okay.
payoff, but the other ones, there's no payoff fees.
Well, wait a minute. Thank you, Iona. The payoff amount on the Volvo loader lease is $170,000.
Correct.
The remaining principal balance on that lease is $158,000. So if we pay this off, the $12,000 is basically what we're giving up. We're giving away $12,000. If I'm reading this correctly,
The
I would-
interest has that payoff interest is part of that 170 payoff fee. So there is that interest that has to be paid,
as a lease,
right?
yes,
Right.
because the interest is part of the contract.
Correct.
It's not interest that is computed on a daily basis. So that's my point. You're contractually obligated to pay almost all of the interest. So why would you pay it off early? You're gonna pay for interest and you haven't used the equipment. So to me, it doesn't make, I mean, if it makes you sleep better at night, then it's, and I tell this to people,
Right, so. in
If you
three-
sleep better at night
in-
because you've
saying
done
in 3 or
something-
4 payments, there's $12,000 worth of taxes, we'd lose $12,000 in 3 payments.
no, No, it's,
The one you're talking about, we have, how many payments left? We have four payments left.
Four-year term.
4-year term.
We just started it,
Yep, so
Yeah.
we're
So
in 1
we're-
year, so we have 3 more years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Sean, do you know anything about these payoffs and stuff, how we could benefit by using the undesignated fund?
Roll it into a CD.
Roll some knowledge.
Now, if you wanted to pay off a capital payment this year out of the undesignated fund balance, so that, and then take out that payment from your budget you're formulating now, you would need an additional appropriation to be able to do it in this fiscal year, because it's not in the budget for this fiscal year. So you would do an additional appropriation, take it out of undesignated prior to next year starting, next fiscal year starting.
Okay, but that's not the question. The question is,
Oh,
do we contractually, we owe 158,000. And we're being told the payoff total is 107. So that's what we're seeing here. So
Lou, where are you getting 158?
on the sheet, payoff principal.
well, the payoff would be lower because you're
Right
paying
point.
it off and you wouldn't have the interest from the following, right?
Well, that's what we're trying to determine whether we would or not. If this were a loan, if we had a loan and it was, daily interest charge, then I would be all for paying it off because we know we're not going to pay any more interest. But this is a lease, and I just need to be clear in my mind that we're not prepaying interest, which it appears, I mean, maybe we're not, but it appears that there's a principal amount of $158,000 that we owe on that Volvo. But the payoff amount is 170. So we're prepaying interest.
So just so you know,
Sorry, I can't help you. I don't know how that
So the
lease is
interest,
set up.
the interest is
Okay.
already in the lease, and I recognize that there is
Right.
absolutely no savings. I just keep it in your holster. I got
No,
the
no,
mic
no,
now, right
yeah,
now.
okay, yeah, go ahead.
So, but ultimately, we are taking debt that would carry on for how many more terms?
3 more years.
3 more years, and it goes away. So next year, the taxpayer is in a better place because we reduced the debt exposure for the next 3 years.
Except you took the money out of the bank account that's earning 4% interest.
Except we're over budget in the bank account by policy.
Then you would literally be better off paying down the debt on the school building where we're being charged daily interest rates at 2-something%.
If you want to go
That would be a
there,
better place to put it.
So to me, this is really dealer's choice, but if we're over the undesignated account by policy and we need to do something with the money, reduce the debt for the taxpayer. So it puts us in a better place for next year. What I was concerned about previously when we were having this discussion was if it was going to be a way to balance the budget for this year and we start next year with the same budgets we're starting with now and it only goes exponential afterwards, that does nothing for the taxpayer long-term. Paying down debt is within the policy and frankly, the right thing to do. Whether you want to do a truck or the school, that's dealer's choice.
Or you could lower the mill rate.
Yeah, but then it's gonna go up next year.
Eventually it's gonna cash my pocket.
Well,
That's, sorry, your mic wasn't hot for that and I wish it was.
because the interest on the loader is 6.77%. He's earning 4% on the CD.
But you're
It's-
paying in advance on the interest. So you're not saving that interest. Anyway, we're going, I don't know how else to explain
This
it.
isn't going
so-
anywhere. What do we do next, Mike? What do you want to propose?
May I ask a question? Totally off topic, but kind of on topic.
As long as you
Brett,
bring your mic a little closer.
Brett, do you know, as we speak, how many appropriations that could possibly come in front of us in the coming 6 months? Thinking about school maintenance, what was spoken of Monday night and what's been spoken of tonight.
So the only ones that I would say that have been discussed that I can see coming forward is the mini excavator and potentially the giving closet. It's the only ones that we've talked about that are potentials as of right now for additional appropriation. But we do have, I think, about $60,000 potential revenue coming in for sales of some items that would offset some of those requests.
Okay, is there anything that you know of in the school maintenance line that could possibly come up as a surprise?
I don't know that the Board of Ed might know, but it's when things break. So we know we've had issues with the HVAC systems and other things that randomly go that are quite pricey.
Yep.
But we did budget on our side that $100,000 that would help cover that stuff. So before we came to for an appropriation from you
It's
guys,
the only way.
we'd have to expend that $100,000 in maintenance.
Okay, so is that $100,000 set aside for possible future maintenance, or is it already
So
allocated?
if it's not allocated, well, some of it is, I should say, some of it is allocated. It's normal, yeah, as Carl said, it's normal maintenance. But in that number is also, some of that was based on expenditures of what they spent last year on things that happened. AC units, pumps, things like that, that were not under warranty. Some of the major things like roof is still under warranty, things like that. But we have had, or the school has had issues with the HVAC systems in both schools over the past year, I'd say.
Okay, so what's going on with that now? So is that gonna be covered in that 100,000?
That's already been, they've already been
remedied?
repaired, but you
Okay.
don't know if something's gonna go again. But like I said, we would have to expend all that 100,000, even if it's allocated, we would have to expend that first before we came for an additional appropriation. Because it would all be in that same line item pretty much.
As far as a ambulance and fire department, what do you see coming down the pike for them?
Nothing, I think with this additional appropriation for the ambulance for this year, that catches them up to speed for this fiscal year, and then next fiscal year, we budgeted that extra money,
Yep.
so that should cover what they're gonna need there. So we did our best to make sure in this budget, we try to cover as much as we can, so we don't have to go for additional appropriations. And what we're looking to do, and Bob would concur, I would believe, is the only time we want to come for an additional appropriation is for a one-time expense, really, that we didn't see coming or something came up where we could realize a savings by purchasing it, like the mini excavator. That's one thing. Over time, we'd see a saving. So that's why we put that aside for a one-time expense.
So you're pretty confident that we're good on that end?
It is from the work that Bob's done and Suzanne to go through everything. I think we're in a great place. And I think our budgeting this year for the ambulance, the fire, and the capital that they need, for the most part, is all spot on. Is there an emergency that could come up? Yes, but that's why we do have that range in the capital account. The only one thing that, as you guys talk about, if you wanted to make an extra payment towards the school or something like that, yes, you would have to put that in this budget, have us put that in the budget as an extra payment, and then use that money to reduce the mill rate in the budget here, right? So that way it wouldn't have to go to, it doesn't have to go to town meeting, because if it's approved in the budget, it's approved.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Brett. And to your point, I don't think we're gonna go there because I think there's just a cleaner way to do this. As we've done in the past, we know that we have an overage by policy. We're gonna leave the, if the budget stays as is, we have a shortfall of 128, 679. We're not gonna do anything about that because we have the money in the undesignated fund over the 17% to cover that should it need to be covered. So now we have $219,000 left theoretically in our overage. Let's just call it that, our overage. That we have, once the new year comes along, we have a whole year to decide, what are we gonna use that money for? And we're gonna come together, we're gonna look at a capital item, or we're gonna look at a debt item, and we're gonna say, we want an appropriation to pay off X, or we want an appropriation to pay off Y, or we want an appropriation to put a payment towards the school thing. And then we're gonna have a town meeting on it, and it's gonna pass because it's our policy, and I just know that our townspeople are gonna say, all right, this is the right thing to do. And it's the cleanest thing to do for us right now. Sound good? Okay, now let's put the summer school back into the Board of Education budget. Who's with me?
Yeah, we're going right back.
How much was that stuff with the school? What? $32,000.
And Stephanie, just a ballpark. How many kids does that benefit? Just, I mean,
I don't know. I think the
but is
message
it-
I should probably tell you is that what I know is that the administrators of the school identified summer school as something that would be not hugely impactful to the students.
so wouldn't be positive it wouldn't be a positive impact?
I think there always is a positive impact. If two kids go to summer school and the summer slide is helped,
Mhm.
then it has a positive impact.
Are there other areas that were cut that would have a bigger positive impact?
This is an unexpected conversation. I mean, we could go back to those slides.
The slides nobody got to see.
Yes, Gary, the slides nobody got to see in advance.
And are required for us to provide under FOIA.
The only reason why I bring it up is, I just feel like, you have to provide summer school to people with an IEP, correct?
We do.
Okay. What's that? I know it is. So that you could not, that you couldn't take that out, obviously. But you have these other kids that are on the margins that summer school really helps, and I'm just having a wife in education, and it just seems like small dollars to have lost that when we're,
If you feel compelled to put money back into the budget, to Lou's point, where is it most impactful? Then I would ask that we would be allowed to decide. I mean, I guess we would,
Yeah.
no matter what, right?
Yes,
But I
you would.
I wouldn't want to say to you, it's summer school, Mike, and then not.
No,
have
no,
it
I
be
know,
summer
I know.
school. So if you felt compelled to put money back into the budget, then I think the board would feel compelled to do an analysis of where that money would be best
Okay.
used.
Like the install of those cameras.
That's already happening.
I mean, I don't see that there's an appetite on this board to change the budget at this point. Is that what I'm hearing? I'm barking up the wrong tree.
I think the fact that the Board of Education has a undesignated fund earmark for the Cub Club of $10,000 in case they need it, and yet chose to eliminate summer school, makes this a moot point for me. They have the capacity to fund this should they feel it was important. That's where I am. on this.
Understood.
I would argue that we couldn't fund summer school with the non-lapsing account. The cost of summer school is in salaries.
But the non-lapsing account should be education related only. However, you're holding $10,000 for a pre-care or post-care club, which I don't think is allowed by your policy, but let's save that for another
I think it is. I think it is. Yeah.
well, that's my 2 cents. And so Dan, you have not had a chance to speak on what you feel about the budgets.
I think the Board of Selectmen budget was accurate, Board of Ed budget accurate. The giving closet has always been a hot button topic with everybody in town. However, I do support it being cut to zero. And with the appetite for the Board of Selectmen to potentially find a director to kind of throw everything under one hat, I think all the organizations for social services in town would need to be kind of reorganized, and that would be a really, really good possibility of putting that wrapped up into one. And I wouldn't want to fund something that somebody in the year is gonna have to come in there and maybe make changes to. So I would let whatever the selectmen are gonna choose to do that, let them figure out what they want to do with that and make their own changes within the person that's going to be taking that over. The one thing after looking through, certain finances and everything is, I know it's under their purview, but the student activity fund, after some emails back and forth and some discussions, needs some accounting updates. Would you say that having it on an old computer and it's updated, but it's using antiquated equipment, and I understand that it's going to be updated to QuickBooks at some point. But I think somebody needs to look into that a little bit more.
So if you listen to the meeting that we just had at 5:30 today, Kathy would address those recommendations from the auditor. She's already began to migrate all of the student activities funds onto like a real QuickBooks account where people can really access it rather than unsupported QuickBooks account. I think she said from 2006. And she hopes to have that done by the end of next week.
Excellent.
And, it seems like the oversight of those, I think it's close to 30 accounts or whatnot, seems very loose at best. And I really hope that the accounting practices of how they receive donations and how the money is spent is really looked at with a fine-tooth comb at some point.
Well, I think the auditor reviewed it and made some recommendations. And I wouldn't want an assertion to be made that the accounting is loose. Because in working with Kathy, I don't think that there's anything that Kathy does that I would consider loose in terms of accounting. And I think that her identifying this earlier in the year, that this was a problem, how it was a not supported QuickBooks program, and beginning to solve that problem. Really, I mean, everything that the auditor said, she's already been moving in that direction.
Great.
And so I don't have any concerns about what will happen. I think that she has excellent oversight, excellent accounting practices, and I don't have that concerns about that account moving forward.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, if I have to go on the record, with the giving closet, I mean, obviously we all know how the good works that Sarah does, and I hate to think that she or others think that we don't want to support her or that organization, because it's not the case at all. It's a question of how do we do this appropriately, as the Board of Selectmen have already determined that it wouldn't be really appropriate without an independent actual business that's registered and has its own, TIN and what have you, that just to make it on the up and legal. And I think there's a way to do that. And, if Sarah and the Giving Club need help with financing to get the 501(c) status, I hope that she would reach out to people, and I'd be happy to be part of that giving closet or whatever you want to call it. And so I just think that we're not in a position as a Board of Finance to tell the Board of Selectmen to move that back in when they already have an idea of how to fund her during the year through an appropriation, hopefully. That being said, I'll entertain a motion to move both the general government and Board of Education budgets to the selectmen for them to move it to a town meeting.
Make a motion to send the Board of Ed and Board of Selectmen budgets to a town meeting
As presented.
as presented.
Second.
Second.
Okay, second from Carl. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, pass 6-0. On to agenda item number 4. We have, before we get into the weeds about the RFP itself, we are kind of, this is supposed to be done, what, in November, generally speaking? And we have to ask for a waiver in order to redo this, right? What was the,
Right, we're gonna be past the deadline of June 1st in this process, so we have to ask for an extension for the RFP.
yep.
So-
We, in the past, we've not gone out with an RFP when when we worked with Sandy for years and years and years. Remember Brett, what was her last name? Yeah, Sandy. So we can postpone the RFP process if we want for 1 year, I believe. If we feel, if we can determine that King and Associates PC will do it again. I think did we have a 3-year contract with them?
Correct.
So we see if they can extend it for us. When do we, as far as getting the RFP done, when do we have to do it? Do we have another 2 weeks that we could think about this, or?
Well, the schedule's pretty tight. I gave you a list of dates, so if we were gonna do this, approve this tonight, it would have to be posted tomorrow to stay on schedule.
Mhm.
I could reach out to King and see if they would be willing to extend it with us for a year. I can contact them tomorrow and start the process.
I think that's too tight. Let's get this done.
So you're suggesting we just stay with King and King?
We would have,
For another year.
but yes, for another year, but we would have to get them to agree to a price. And we don't really have time for that. So is there any change from this RFP from past years?
The only thing that changed is the dates.
Okay,
This was from 2018, this RFP that was approved by the attorney.
okay. And we used this one 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Motion for this.
Okay.
There's a typo in this first paragraph, A, under introduction. Sentence 6, the italicized audits, it should say of states, local governments, and nonprofit organizations.
Thank you.
That's like a true lawyer, like catch right there. I knew Wynonna could do it.
So just for consideration, and I know we got to get this out the door, but would we put an extension term in this, preparing for the next time we're in this situation? Saying it's a 3-year contract, but if we extend for an extra year, it'll be X. We just lock that down, so that way we never have to have this worry again? Or is that, we don't have to add it. I mean, we got to get this out the door, we get it out the door.
We'll get it out the door.
Yeah, got it.
No, that's a good point, Gary, but you know,
I did. I can re-email it
I
again,
mean,
not with the dates. I did, it was a couple of weeks ago.
Mike,
Or
I
last
don't know
week.
if this will, if there is anything to be concerned about with this, but this was written in 2018. And we just changed the dates. There have been a couple of count ruling changes in the last couple of years. And, pardon?
It's gonna change the amount.
Right, and what I'm saying is that what we're being asked to them to do, it might be, we should maybe include on some of these things for the deliverables and any other statutorily required.
The requirements. I think when we did this last time, it was each year, there was a statutorily change where they had to provide a report. They provided what, because they have to provide a complete audit report to the state, correct?
Correct.
So if they add 2 more reports, I think they contractually just have to provide those.
That's my,
Yeah.
Just
Find a
give
date
us-
for you.
sorry to the public, but we're just kind of like giving this a once over again.
April 10th, I sent it. Oh, I sent it to Dan and Michael.
Would that answer for Lou be under scope of work performed?
Okay.
Which one?
Let's take a look.
I got it, Dan.
Carl, you asked me.
Let's hear, there's I would say on page 6, guys. Paragraph I, implied requirements. It says all services not specifically mentioned in this request for proposals that are necessary to provide the functional capabilities described by the auditor shall be included in the scope of services. That says to me that, if there's some kind of change that materially affects the reason of having the audit, it has to be included in the services provided.
You still have to provide a complete audit to the state. and federal government.
Right. So I'm okay with that. I make a motion that we send out the RFP as presented here tonight.
Second.
Any further discussion? As edited,
As edited.
just for grammatical or spelling purposes. But the,
Technical content.
yeah, the technical content is as presented. We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passing 6-0. Thank you, Suzanne, for getting this together. We have minutes that Amy had sent out. Yep.
Make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from April 9th, 2025 as written.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 6-0. Public comment.
Brian, I'll make it quick so you can have the floor. Judy May, Norwich Wesley Road. Thank you guys for all the hard work. Appreciate everything you've done this budget season. But I want to know, how come you guys don't say the Pledge of Allegiance? If you guys could consider adding that to your agenda.
That is an interesting point. I think we're the only one that does, only board that does.
You
That's
are.
because
What has it done in the 14 years?
it's never been a part of it,
That's sad.
because Dan Smith was totally against the flag. No,
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
Can-
Not Dan Smith, I'm sorry, Dare Spring.
Yeah.
Well, if it's something you guys would consider.
We shall consider that. I'll add it to the agenda. Brian? You got 2 minutes.
Ooh, it's on mine. Okay, Brian Rathbun, 260 feet, Grindstone Hill Road. Okay, I got a couple of questions and I just want to make one comment about that undesignated fund thing. I know you got it at 17% and we got an overage. It sounds like you're gonna keep that overage for a year. In other words, I paid taxes over taxes. So you're gonna keep it. I'm not gonna get any return on my tax for that.
The policy is that if
I
it
know
gets
it-
over 70%, we have 1 year, within the year, we have to do something about it.
Wow. So you can use my tax money for a year to do whatever you want. At this point, I'll just throw it in an account and. try
Right
to
now,
get
it's,
into-
right now, it's earning 4% interest on, along with the other undesignated
I'd much
funds.
rather have that tax back in my pocket. but
Which, well,
The other thing is the undesignated for the school. And I looked that up, by the way, the state law, you're right on that. They can go between 1% and 2% over. So that means that's another 1% or 2% I'm overpaying on my taxes. So if you add the two together, I'm paying 19% over on, or two taxes that you can use. That's what I'm saying, and I just don't think that's right. That's only my opinion, and I'm only one person. But I think it's terrible. I can't say to the town, oh, okay, I'm gonna hold back 17% of my money, and I'll give it to you when you decide what you're gonna do with it. Because I could use that 17%. The only other comment I got, who determines, once it goes, actually, it's gonna go to a public hearing now, right? Or it's supposed to,
It's gonna go to a public meeting,
public meeting, I mean,
town meeting,
and
then they're gonna move it to a
Who-
referendum likely.
does the Board of Selectmen determine that, or?
The Board of Selectmen puts the call out to put it to a town meeting for 2 weeks from then, from Friday, I think. Or tomorrow, I think they may meet.
And they'll
Friday.
determine whether it's a separate vote for the Board of Selectmen's budget or the general budget and
it will be.
the Board of Ed. I mean, they usually do, but I mean, they could feasibly put it together, right?
I don't think they're gonna do that. I think we've.
No, I don't think
We've
they
gone
will.
back to we tried it one year and I think we're back to two separate votes.
That was a disaster. All right, that'll be 2 weeks after the hearing, won't it?
Yeah, most likely be,
Yeah.
so we're talking a month away.
Okay. And the only other thing I was gonna ask is, see, that's here. How do we determine whether it's a referendum or do,
The town meeting will be on May 5th,
Fifth?
Brian, just so you know.
okay, I had it on.
And then May 19th will be the referendum. I'm gonna be in Florida. Can you, Emily, can you do like absentee voting for the referendum? You hear that, public? I asked whether or not there would be absentee ballot voting for the referendum, and Emily Lewis,
Sign your ballots.
who is a registrar, says yes. There is, a day after the town meeting, there will be absentee ballots available for the referendum. Because my wife and I will be in Florida for a seminar.
So it
So I'm
will
glad
be
to
a
hear that.
referendum, right?
What's that?
It will be on a referendum. I mean,
Yes.
it won't be a show of hands, obviously.
There will be a referendum 2 weeks after the town meeting.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, and like I said before, you've done a great job, I think. We'll find out. Thank you again.
You're welcome, Brian. We have somebody online wants to speak? Just on the, we're gonna go, but we have an undesignated fund that our policy is we want to have enough in there in case there's an emergency. That's why there's a floor of 8.5%. We don't want to overtax, hold the money, taxpayers' money to a degree where it's doing more harm to your wallets than it's doing good, and that's the ceiling of 17%. We've been told by our auditors that that's actually on the low side, that ceiling. That's why we heard Carl talk about, are we going to raise that? We're not in a position to do that at this time. We think we're pretty good at 17% as a ceiling. And we don't want to hold your money, Brian, that's above and beyond that. And we won't do that because our policy says we have to do something with that money to do something to benefit the taxpayers to get it back down under 17%, to 17% or lower. So part of it is that we're leaving the mill rate where it is and using some money to cover the gap in the budget. And then we have an option to take $219,000 as it is right now, or some money amount close to that, to do something to pay down debt for the taxpayers to benefit them into the future. That's what we're doing. We'll hold it till we have a good handle on what we want to use it for. And not do it silly or make some kind of rash decision. We're going to figure out what's got the most interest that's going to benefit the town the most. And we'll do it as soon as we can. You know, and that's what the summer and the fall, when we're kind of in the down period, those are good times to look at those things. Okay. No, it's what we have as a policy. We can hold it for a whole year.
Trust us, Brian. Trust us, Brian. We've never steered you wrong.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.